Chris,
Ed, hey, how you
how are you
doing?
doing? Okay. Let me just turn my volume up.
No worries. Good
Um,
to almost meet you in person.
yeah, I knew it's surreal because you've been on this screen where I'm sitting now so many times, but now I'm actually interacting with you. It's bizarre.
Yeah, it's fun. I find it sometimes as well. I'll bump into somebody at a seminar and they'll be. I've never met them, and they'll be chatting to me like they know me, and they're like, "Oh yeah, because I've been watching your videos for a bit." I was like, "Oh, this is a weird kind of one-sided sort of relationship kind of thing." So
Yeah, yeah,
interesting. Yeah. Thanks for
but
taking the time to chat. Yeah, are you okay if we record this, by the way?
yeah, of course, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking it would be really helpful because I know there's a lot of other, particularly sort of new graduates and students the last few years, but even experienced chiros as well, who this whole balancing manual therapy, pain science, juggling act type thing is a struggle. So yeah, I think it'd be really valuable. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, no, looking forward to it.
Yeah.
How am I on the screen? Am I too high, too low,
Perfect.
too?
No, that's great. Yeah, yeah. It's one of the things I learned after buying a decent webcam was that when it comes to online content, people don't care about video quality at all. So yeah, it's the audio. You want to put your money in a microphone, not a webcam, apparently. So, but that's fine. That's
Okay,
you've got a nicer background than I do. Actually, I'm a bit jealous now.
yeah, it's nice.
Yeah. So yeah, like thanks for taking the time. I thought I've got a few kind of questions I wanted to ask, but I didn't really want to have it like a structured interview. I thought it'd be more fun to just kind of have a conversation, kind of explore, your journey and how things go and see where we end up, if that's all right.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Um,
do you mind just going through just a little bit of your background? Because I know we've spoken on and off through the years, but just to kind of give a sense of kind of how you started as a chiropractor.
yeah, my I mean, I never knew what a chiropractor was until I was about 21 years old. And I just graduated from my first degree and I was completely lost, didn't know what to do, um, and was just searching for something that suited the way I wanted to work. And I looked into all sorts of things that I look back now and think it was crazy. For some reason, I thought being into weights and measures was going to be the thing. And I don't know why that was seemed appropriate. But what I've realized is that was about me wanting to be an expert in something.
Hmm.
And it didn't matter what I was going to be an expert in, I just wanted to know an awful lot about something. And through a series of mistrials and trying certain things and applying for certain things, somebody suggested to me that I should be an osteopath. Um, so I looked into that. I got myself enrolled on the course in the British School of Osteopathy. Um, and during the open day, during the orientation day, we were asked, why do you want to be an osteopath so badly? What is it about being an osteopath that suits you? People came up with these very worthy answers. Um, and the professor said something along the lines of, look, it's great, you all want to help people and you all want to get into this profession, but why don't you become chiropractors, because you'll see 10 times as many patients. So I left that day thinking, right, what is a chiropractor?
Yeah.
I looked into it and I was lucky to find out that the course in New York had just started, which was, the difference between uprooting and living in London or a couple of hours down the road was a bit of a no-brainer, really.
Hmm.
And so I don't have that kind of romantic story about being helped by a chiropractor when I was younger, or being envious of a chiropractor. It was just the idea that it was a very selfish reason, really. I wanted to be an expert in something, and that fit the bill.
Okay, I think if we're all honest with ourselves, I think a lot of us would say that's part of it. I think
Mm.
that's something that, yeah, a lot of people I met, it's like they really want to be the expert. They want to be known as the specialist in something. I think sometimes as chiropractors, we kind of carry around a little bit of like it's that whole like, oh, but you're not a real doctor. You didn't do medicine kind of thing. I've kind of felt that a bit myself of like I've got to prove to them that I am an expert in something. Yeah, I mean, because I was second generation chiropractor, so I kind of grew up with it. So I had that just, oh yeah, I was always exposed to it. I never had what's this chiropractic thing moment.
Yeah.
I looked at other stuff and realized none of it seemed as fun to me, which I'm glad my parents pushed me in other directions. But yeah, I think that wanting to be an expert, that's something that I think a lot of us do feel. Maybe we don't always acknowledge it to other people though. Okay, so one of the things we were sort of chatting about the last few years was kind of your journey into more of the pain science realm, particularly around cognitive functional therapy, Petro Solomon's work, that sort of thing. Could you tell me a little bit more about kind of how you got into that? Because that wasn't something that was taught when I was at Wheel. You know, never mind when you were there as well. So, yeah, how did you kind of come across that?
This was my quest to be the best and to be able to cover all angles about what I did. And that started off by looking into loads of different, techniques or, things like core stability. So I got very heavily into Stu McGill's work. I was looking at things like Gonstead technique and Mackenzie and all these, sort of traditional physical models. Because I was always trying to be able to answer the questions. I was trying to answer if a patient had a question for me. I felt, a duty, and I still do. I think it's very important. I have a duty to be able to give that patient a decent answer for, what's going on with them or why aren't they getting better. And it occurred to me that I wasn't able to give them very good answers if it was purely based on, why isn't this treatment working for me? Why, I've had 10 or 20 adjustments and nothing's changed. Why is that? And I just, I was very honest with myself, and I thought I haven't really got a good answer for that. And I just happened to be at the European Chiropractic Union conference in Dublin, and this is about 2011, I think, 2012. And I saw Don Murphy speak, and he was introducing this idea of the primary spine practitioner. And he was very keen on this idea of, just being very scientific with back pain, and we identify what's going on with that patient and we match the appropriate diagnosis to their presentation. And that seems, of course, really, really simple, but it was an eye-opener for me when I realized how many cases I would have missed. Just if the expression of when you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. It really resonated with me, and I felt really excited that I'd found this sort of, this possibly the answer to all these questions about why don't so many of my patients improve. And that just led me down the kind of rabbit hole of, reading up on the science behind pain, which was new to me. It never occurred to me that there was a science behind why things hurt. And I just kept seeing the same names popping up, names like Lorimer Moseley and David Butler. And so I just started to shift towards finding that stuff absolutely fascinating, which it is. And I just found that for me provided way more answers, actually getting the story from that person and fitting it to a more whole person perspective just really suited the way I saw things. But it was quite a shift, it jarred to begin with. I didn't really see how that could fit. And I just sort of had a bit of an epiphany, really. I think it was when I saw Mike Stewart at the BCA conference, and I can't remember what year that was. But that, again, was just the moment where I heard somebody say something that made me think, that's what I'm looking for. That guy there seems to know, have the answers to the questions I have. And so it was really, I found, because I work on my own, I found it really helpful to kind of have these consistent messages from people like Mike Stewart, like Lorimer Moseley, Dave Butler, and Petro Solomon. That was really useful in a profession that we're in, where none of us agree about anything. For every chiropractor, there's an equal and opposite chiropractor. Which is not helpful for us as a profession. It certainly isn't helpful for people who come to see us, I don't think, because I find myself still, kind of, I have to draw back from criticizing what a patient has heard from another chiropractor. So I think that's a total mess. But the Petro Solomon just kind of encapsulates everything in a way more practical way. In that when you see, or if you see Peter working, he does these workshops, which I know you've been on, and I've been on a couple of times. When you see him work with an actual patient who's in pain, again, it's just that moment where you think that's how we should be doing it. That's my belief. That's how we should be helping people. Now, unfortunately for me, Peter doesn't do any manual therapy, or doesn't, not in the traditional sense anyway. This debate about hands on, hands off. When you see Peter's work, his hands are very much on, but there's no actual treatment going on. So that really, threw a spanner in the works about wanting to emulate somebody who seemed to get this so right. But how did that fit with, a business model that relies on people having their adjustments? So that was the question that I still struggle with. You know, I still have this, the pendulum that swings from one way to the other. And I think I'm finding the middle, but it's really difficult because that's fascinating. It's so interesting. But to fit it into your day-to-day work where you still have to pay the bills because people come to you, you know, expecting a very specific treatment. And I think the skill and you know, the stuff you do really helps with this is to blend that, is to have that conversation with the person to kind of really, you know, to draw out of them what their expectations are and whether those expectations are realistic, and whether they're really going to be able to get what they want from you.
Yeah, and I think to rewind a little bit, you touched on this, and it resonated with me that when you first started encountering a lot of these, you know, these bigger names in the pain science world, you know, like say Lauren Mimosi's, Mike Stewart, that it was a challenge at the start because it was, you know, obviously it was very different to the more structural biomechanical approach that most of us who didn't graduate in the last few years were trained in. Can you speak a little bit more about that challenge? That sounds like there's a bit of a conflict there.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the challenge is to try and dial down a little bit the, you know, how excited we might be about the science or the stuff we've read. And the challenge is to make that fit. And it's to respect, despite the fact that it's frustrating, it's to respect that the patient has no idea about these things. They don't need to walk around understanding pain science or any kind of science, you know, because we meet people who, you know, we meet very intelligent, you know, I live in a university town, so lots of my patients are professors, and they have no idea about their backs or their spines or the anatomy, or, you know, they don't know any of this. And I don't, you know, to expect them to also then be able to just grasp these ideas of pain science, which, you know, if it's done badly, it sounds very, very kind of alternative when you're talking about pain being a perception and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, the challenge was to be extremely excited about something that I felt would help loads of people, but that really wasn't what they were expecting. And to try and get that balance right is ongoing for me. It really is ongoing to try and get that, you know, because it's about respecting the fact that no matter what the patient expectation is, you have to meet them where they are, which is a phrase that I'd heard for 20 years, and only recently does that phrase actually make any sense to me.
Yeah.
You do respect where they've got to in this journey. And so, yeah, so you know, the challenge was to, or is rather, I'll be honest, the challenge is to know how you drip feed that information to somebody and to judge how much they really need to know here. You know, and to read people in a far more effective way, to switch on to the fact that are they interested? Do they want to know these things? You know, are you bludgeoning them with information? Have they switched off?
Yeah, I can think of a very specific patient I saw. Actually, when I was doing my PG cert, I wrote an assignment on this of how wrong I got it. That turns out an unsolicited 15-minute neurophysiology lecture wasn't what she needed. She'd been to see her osteopath, usually cracked her pelvis back into alignment. And I think for some reason she couldn't see them, so she came to me, and I was like, oh, I've discovered this pain science thing recently, and I'm going to show you all this stuff about how it's not going out of alignment. And yeah, I think I said to her 3 times, I'm not saying the pain is in your head. The pain's real. And then she left, and then booked a follow-up, and then called up a few hours later to cancel it. And the receptionist was very good, finding out a bit more. And eventually she sort of said to the receptionist, like, well, I'm going to go find another osteopath. He just said the pain was all in my head. And I was like, I said 3 times the pain wasn't all in your head, but I said it amongst this very complicated, you know, unasked for lecture that just completely threw her the wrong way. And that was the thing for me to go, oh, okay, yeah, it's not as simple as, hey, I've got a load of new knowledge, I'm excited about it, let me cram it into your brain right now. I don't know if you find this, but I often find chiropractors particularly, we're guilty of really overdosing patients on education at the start. Even traditional chiropractic, even, you know, a high volume vitalist chiropractor, they still see that report of findings as this is where we have to get them to understand everything about what we do.
Yeah.
And it's funny that I moved away from that, and then in that pain science thing, I just fell into exactly the same trap of this is my one chance to cram all this knowledge you need to know into your head and expect you to A, understand it, and B, thank me for it. Which is it's a bit of a tall ask for most patients, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing we don't, or we should really take on board as well is that these people are in pain. It's all very well us talking, talking pleasantries and saying, how have you been? How's your day? All this kind of stuff. And there's somebody sitting there who is probably half of their brain is distracted on how they are feeling at that precise moment. And the way I liken it a lot of the time is to consider that person in front of you is in pain. It's like, if you have road rage, you're not thinking straight. You are not yourself in that split second. You will do things and say things and react in a way that's completely out of character for you because of just something that's happening to you in that moment. And I think that if we kind of appreciate that person sitting in front of you has got a bit of, or maybe a lot of that going on in their brain, that it's not really fair to try and get them to sit and listen and to process and to, and also to massively change their mind about something. Because we're highly trained chiropractors and physical therapists and physios or whatever, and plenty of us don't get it. Plenty of us don't find this stuff fits at all with how they see things. And so how we expect, poor Mrs. Jones to get it is it's a mistake from, it's a mistake I've made. It's a mistake I probably still make, and it's interesting for me and perhaps for you to kind of have been around long enough to see almost the backlash to this idea that you can pain science people out of pain. And I sort of see, I can see that. I don't think I would have had no time for that kind of opinion about 5 years ago. But now, with the benefit of hindsight, I do look back and say to anybody who's maybe on the threshold of going down this rabbit hole is just hold your horses, just draw back a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, it's sort of become a technique. It's a bit like if somebody goes to an SOT seminar, it's like, I'm going to do pure SOT. Now that's all I'm going to, like, that was the first technique I did out of uni. And it was, of course, after my first seminar, everybody for the next month got SOT. And some of them, they seemed to do better. And that was really cool. But it took one of my colleagues to point out, he covered for me and he saw one of my patients. He's like, why have you started blocking this guy? I was like, well, I thought that's what he's like, no, he was getting better. And now he's not. Like, look at the last 3 visits. He hasn't gotten any better. That's exactly when he started using blocks. It's like, this guy doesn't need SOT. And it was like, oh, okay, yeah, I got a little bit carried away running with that. And I think the same thing happens with, I find the people who are big proponents of it will go, it's not a technique. They'll really resist that idea. And I think, in its actual form, it's not, but it can often, especially when there's different brands of it, like therapeutic neuroscience education. Obviously, Peter's got cognitive functional therapy. You give it a name like that, it's like, well, it kind of does become a technique to me. And that's, I think, you were talking about, it's then difficult to kind of blend that with other techniques you might be using. I mean, if we can rewind a little bit. So your first Petro Solomon seminar, where you saw that, what was it that you really, I mean, you obviously came away from that feeling like, wow, this is something I really want to do more of. What was it that he was doing that you didn't see in other practitioners or other approaches?
I think it was, it may have been just the first time that you could see it in action. So to kind of read, Mosley and Butler stuff, or to see clips, or all that kind of stuff was fascinating. But then to actually see that processed into something actually tangible in front of you, I think was just the light bulb moment.
Yeah. It's a bit like learning how to adjust from a textbook versus seeing one actually do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I imagine, I suppose a student actually, seeing a treatment happen and the person get off the bed and go, oh wow, that feels so much better. Then as a student go, well, great, this is absolutely what I'm going to be doing for everybody then. So it was just that. And Peter's, he's an incredibly charismatic guy. He lives and breathes what he does, and that's fascinating. you know, I think everybody should be fascinated if they see somebody who's so good at what they do. You just stand back and go, wow, look at that guy. No matter, you know, talking about athletes or actors or whatever it might be, just look at somebody giving, you know, a masterclass and think, I want a bit of that. And also it was, you know, it was backed up by the fact that you were seeing these people with these really complicated problems who were getting better. And, you know, the criticism would be, well, you know, it's a bit like faith healing. You've got this massive crowd of people. Of course, the person's going to stand up and say, well, thanks, Peter, I feel great. But he'd put his money where his mouth is and say, let's get these people back in a year's time and see how they're getting on.
Mm.
You know, and it was warts and all. Some people were coming back saying, I was a bit better for a while, but now the problems come back, etc., etc. You know, and he's, you know, that whole movement is modest enough to say, yeah, this isn't perfect. But, you know, it seems to be getting closer to what we perhaps should be doing with people.
Yeah.
But, you know, I don't know, it's just I think that's fine when perhaps, and I, you know, I'll come back to that, the idea that, you know, that's fine as long as your mortgage isn't depending on seeing, you know, a bunch of people a week.
Mm.
It's fine if you perhaps have another means of income. But, you know, I'm just going back to the idea, just warning anybody who's kind of thinking going that way, is just, you know, use it carefully, or, you know, it becomes just the air you breathe, not the thing you do.
Mm.
That it's involved with a bit of treatment, and the interpretation of the treatment you're giving for me has changed massively.
So yeah, so what happened then? You come back from your first Petro Solomon seminar, and are you thinking, I'm just going to do this? Or are you thinking I'll take bits of it? Like, what happened afterwards when you tried to put it into practice?
Yeah, no, I literally instructed my receptionist to get a red biro and put a line under, you know, anybody who'd seen me, you know, before whatever it was, you know, May 2016, put a red line under their last treatment, and I'm going to start being Petro Solomon from this point on. And let's
wow,
see.
it was like, okay, bang,
Yeah,
overnight I'm going to make this change.
Big red line. I want to see where I was going wrong with these people, and now I'm going to implement this, and now I'm going to tell people that, you know, there's, you know, the treatment is going to be this. No, I wouldn't actually tell them. You know, I would you know, sort of mimic that whole kind
Petro
of approach.
Solomon my way through that explanation kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And was the assumption you were going back to everybody and you were like, okay, everybody I've seen pre this point, I have been treating them wrong.
Yeah.
That was the assumption, no matter where they were at or how they were doing. It's like, I've done these people a disservice. It's time to fix that.
There was one particular patient, and this for me was almost the validation I needed at that time. On the Thursday morning before I went to London to see the workshop for the first time, I spent a big long session with the patient going all through the McGill core stability stuff. You know, really, you know, that was how big a change I went through. So she got completely McGilled on Thursday morning. Tuesday morning, then, when I was back from London, she was miserable because she was in so much pain. And she'd said, look, I came to you with a bit of a niggly back, and the stuff you gave me to do last week, I've never been in so much pain. And for me, it was like, aha, I know why. I know why, because I should never have given you that stuff. So let's throw all that stuff in the bin, and let's now do this. And it was, you know, I mean, I never saw her again, because what the hell did she thought was going on? That there's this guy who's so confident about something on Thursday, who's not only is talking differently, but dressed differently, and, you know, you know, it's a bit of hero worship at the time.
Yeah.
That was a complete turnaround, absolute turnaround to adjustments and core stability. Core stability is rubbish. I'm not going to touch you.
Yeah, everything I've been doing until now is wrong, but now I'm definitely right, and you should trust me on
Now,
this.
yeah, absolutely. Now I've got it. And I thought they'd all thank me, and I thought they'd all be so pleased that I was saying, look, you know, I'm going to show you how to do these things yourself, and we've got it all wrong all these years. And some did, but, you know, most didn't. Most were confused. And exactly like you said, you know, people, you know, my regular patient, I've got one patient who loves to tell me, oh, I saw such and such in the street, and he said he'll never come and see you again because you told him it's all in his head. And, you know, I've got this big whiteboard here, and there'd be times when I'm literally writing in massive letters, this is not in your head. And the session would end with somebody saying, okay, I get it, it's in my head. Like, well, how much clearer can you say to somebody, this pain is not in your head, but they still get that message. So yeah, it was too much. It was too much of a shift.
Yes, it's a very, very very black and white kind of shift. It's like, okay, come Monday morning, I'm doing this, that's it. But of course you could go, what stopped you going, well, they didn't come back, I finally got them better. That's the Dunning-Kruger trap I think we all fall into at times. If they didn't come back, well, it must be because I'm so great.
Yeah.
Apart from the patient telling you it's because they think you said this, like what kind of stopped you from doing that? Because it's a trap I see a lot of people fall into, especially when we go to this sort of approach as well.
Reality, I suppose. The reality of being really headstrong and really determined that this is going to work, and it's just a matter of people will get it, people will tell other people, and I thought there might be a greater acceptance that maybe, for years I've been trying to get integrated into things like the local GP surgeries or the local physio department, and it was, closing door, nobody's interested because of the title chiropractor. If I just put the groundwork in, then as time goes on, I will be accepted for doing it this way around, and there'll be success. And I suppose it's when incrementally that just became obvious that was not going to happen. And just the feel of the clinic change, the feel of kind of, getting to know people, because they would have their course of treatment and then come back for their follow-ups, starting to think, yeah, I'm not having that anymore. I don't have that sort of, nice friendly feeling of people who come and they have a chat and they have a little treatment and see you in a couple of months, and it just, and let's be honest, it was my wife who kind of looks after the finances, who said, what's going on, people going, because it used to be, the business model was doing very well. What's changed? So, it wasn't really a realization. It was more like a bit of attrition to sort of have.
Can you share a bit more about, because it sounds like there's a couple of points there. There's the financial aspect of like, okay, patients are not coming back. We've got less people coming through the door, but also you had this nice friendly feel. But do you feel like you lost that friendly atmosphere as well?
Yeah, definitely, because it was. Again, because it was about violating people's expectations, and if they sort of said, "Oh yeah, this makes a lot of sense, thank you," but there was still a lot of doubt, and there was still a lot of, it was almost like the best case scenario is that they would say, "That was helpful, thank you, but I'll work on what you've suggested, and maybe I'll see you again." So that would be a great outcome for me if somebody seemed like they understood. And then through the spectrum of people, literally saying, "I'm never coming back here again." So yeah, no, the whole thing became, it became stressful again to try and retain patients, or to try and get enough new patients through the door that it was okay to sort of see them once or twice. And at the time, because I'd done some training before in kind of practice building. At the time, it was like a false economy, that I was seeing loads and loads and loads of patients, loads of new patients. So I was just able to kind of, go through. I was able to kind of retain a big chunk of normal patients and not be too bothered about the new patients, because I was so sure that they'd got the right stuff from me, if that makes sense.
So you still had sort of a fairly solid base of patients who've known you for a long time.
Yeah.
And they stuck with you despite the fact overnight you were like, we're going to change your entire treatment approach.
Yeah, there was some that I lost, but and I don't know. I mean, there are the regular patients I still have. They've stuck through it, even though I can think at the top of my head a few that I really tried to sort of wean them off the manual therapy. And they stuck with it. They stuck with this or that, recommendation, whatever it might be. They stuck with it.
What was their reaction when you started trying to change this thing that they may have been very used to and comfortable with you for quite a while?
I think, like most people who are dissatisfied, they just don't say much and wander off. It takes quite a lot of guts to actually say to somebody in that context, I think you're making a mistake here. I think you're going the wrong way with this. And one or two.
It's funny. It's a very rare patient who says, "I think you're wrong." They might say, "I think, not sure that's me," or should we maybe do this or that? But to actually say, "No, Hedd, I think you're wrong."
Yeah.
Not sure I've ever had a patient be that direct with me. It's a big ask.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, absolutely. And it's, you know, I think this day and age, you might get it through, you know, Google review or something like that. But
Oh, that's
you
true. Yeah.
know, I think I had one patient actually who said it in a nice way. She sort of said it in a, I don't know if do you remember the guy called Gerald Ratner? Remember that? Do you know that name?
Not at the moment. No.
He had a very successful jewelry company. I think it was in the 80s. And I think he was a multimillionaire through this jewelry company. And he thought it was okay to tell people that the jewelry he's selling was crap. And he thought that was funny. He thought that would be kind of, people would say, "Oh, great, you know, that's kind of, you know, this honest millionaire telling us how it is," kind of thing. And of course, you know, nobody's heard of Gerald Ratner anymore, apart from people who, you know, alive in the 80s. But yeah, he threw away his business based on that kind of realization that he was selling cheap stuff but making a mint from it.
Mm.
And so the patient basically told me that. She said, don't throw away this thing that you're really good at. You know, you're downplaying this skill you have, and this thing that really helps me. You seem to just be very dismissive of it.
Mm.
Um, I mean, yeah, so I took that with a pinch of salt at the time, but she's quite right. You know, she's quite right to say, you know, I was denying her this treatment that was helpful to her. So, you know, who was I to tell her that this wasn't helpful for her when it clearly was?
Mm.
Yeah, there's an instance where, yeah, she felt comfortable enough with me to say, I don't know why you're doing this, but you know, stop throwing
Yeah.
away
But
the talent.
for every patient who says that, there's a ton more who are like, I just don't. I'm not going to say anything, but I'm going to walk off, or I'm going to hang around a bit, but 1 foot out the door.
Yeah, yeah. So I don't really know why lots of the patients you know, I thank them. Well, I do know really because it comes back to the stuff that you do. It's about, you know, realizing that I made a very good connection with that person. That person trusts me. You know,
Mm.
probably secondary that they have an opportunity every few months or few weeks or whatever it might be to come and see me and you know, chew over the problems they have, and that's more valuable than the actual treatment they get, in my opinion. But that's why lots of people stuck with me, is because of the therapeutic alliance that was built, you know, way back
Yeah,
when.
you'd put a lot of trust in the trust bank, and although in their eyes you're spending a lot, it's like, well, we're not going to go overdrawn straight away. And
Yeah,
and when you were talking about that atmosphere, I had the sense of it's almost like the relationship with some patients. The word combative was coming up to me, and I think that's a bit strong, but I'm also not coming up with a better word. It's like you're going in being like, I've got to change you. And
yeah,
it's not I've got to do something to you haven't done before, but it's like I'm going to have to actually change who you are. And
yeah.
that's, you know, what we know about the context and the healing environments is that sort of thing. It's like that's making it much harder to get not just change done, but any kind of healing done as well.
Mm. Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I do. You know, I did feel that, and still do to an extent. I still struggle with realistic expectations that patients have. Especially, there's a certain demographic that I imagine is common for all of us, which is, you know, men in their 20s who expect, you know, really quick results with very complicated problems, and they've got, you know, they're here today to be fixed.
Yeah,
And
I
I
saw the cracks on YouTube. Give me the cracks from YouTube and I'll be good, right?
You don't need to ask me any questions. Just, you know, get on with it, and I'll be on my way. So I still struggle with that because I feel as though there could be a way that we could manage their expectations before the appointment.
Mm.
I'm also aware that no matter what you know, what content you might give them in an like a welcome email or a little welcome video that I do, or whatever that might be, they don't read it, they don't watch it, they don't look at the website. You know, they know what they want, so they don't really need background research.
But it's meeting them where they're at again, isn't it? And
Yeah,
sometimes I've as I've developed in my career, I've got more. I feel like I've got better at spotting. Oh, I've got to meet this person where they're at. Where they're at is a place where I probably can't help them right now, or
yeah,
I'm maybe not the best person to do it. And even though I might know what they need, whether it's a personal thing or whether it's just their mindset, it's like that. It not right now. If I try and do it right now, I'm going to blow whatever chance I have at having a longer term relationship, and I'm probably just going to put them off the idea of chiropractic or whatever it is I do. So yeah, sometimes meeting them where they're at is going, oh, I see where you're at. I'm not the right person for you right now.
yeah, and that's difficult to do. Like I say, when you have to balance the books, when you're looking at somebody thinking, you know, if I just shut up and get on with it, you know, there's an extra X £100 in the bank that we need. You know? So it's a luxury to be able to choose your patients. And I believe that we should do that for their benefit. And I live in a small, you know, it's a seaside university town. There's nobody I can refer to really. You know, I would love to have the situation where I can say, right, okay, I can see what you're saying. That's not the kind of chiropractor I am, but I'm going to give you, you know, John's number. He's around the corner. He's great. He'll really, I'll give him a ring for you and say, John, can you see this guy right now?
Yeah. So, tough to be the only expert around.
Yeah, absolutely. So I suppose that would be, you know, my advice to anybody who wants it, which is to try and, you know, to maybe have a look around the landscape that you're in and see how that might be able to help you, so that you can still seem like you're absolutely doing the right thing for that person by passing them on for the right reason. You know, it's not the hot potato case where he's thinking, I don't know what to do with this patient, I'll send them, you know, for
I mean, that's the classic new run, isn't it? It's like, I don't know what they're not better than 3 visits. I'll refer back to the GP. And I always tell mine, it's like, you're never allowed to refer back to the GP. You can send them to the GP with a view to getting an onward referral or some tests or something. But if you have to have an objective, you have to have an idea of what you think the GP might do. You can't just go, I don't know, over to you. Easier said than done when they're starting out, but it's that idea of like, I don't mind being a stepping stone to something else. I'd rather not be a dead end. I don't want to ever say to a patient, sorry, can't help you, don't know what to do. And that's, easier said than done with certain referrals and certain patients and things. So just going back to when you have been putting this in practice, and it seems like some patients, it really helped. But overall, when did you realize, okay, this isn't really working like it should? When did you start sort of maybe having doubts or concerns around that?
That's a good question. I think it was, I mean, honestly, I think it was lockdown. It was 2020. It was having the opportunity to stop and take a step back and think, right, where are we going with the business? Where are we going with the clinic? Where are we going with my career? You know, am I becoming the expert that I want to be? And I think that was a really useful time to press pause. So yeah, and I think with lots of other things, of course, but I think that was a chance for me to look back and kind of think, okay, it's been 4 years now, from 2016 to 2020, to have gone really, you know, hardcore in on this kind of hands-off pain sciencey, you know, has it worked? And I just took a bit of time to reflect on it and do some, you know, I find expressive writing very interesting, by the way, just to write out the stuff that's in your head and or don't, or burn it, or whatever you need to do with it afterwards. But I found that very useful to kind of really be honest with myself and say, is this working? You know, and the answer was no, it's not. You know, it really isn't.
What was your criteria for working? What was the image of working or not working in your head for that?
It was about, I suppose, am I excited to go to work anymore? Am I burning out on this? And I think that the ability to, you know, not go to work for a few weeks and to feel so much better, you know, sort of told me a lot about, you know, the environment that I'd created within the clinic. And that the reason I went down that rabbit hole in the first place was because I was getting stressed with not being able to answer these questions. But there's these, you know, 4 or 5 years later going, well, I'm even more stressed now because I don't even have people who ask me these questions because they've all buggered off somewhere.
Not staying long enough to find out if it works or not. Yeah.
And like I say, to be honest, my wife, who has, you know, actually a very, very top local government job, but also because I'm clueless with business, and maybe that's another, you know, signpost, isn't it? Don't be useless at business and run a business. But she takes care of all that kind of stuff. So it's like having your accountant over breakfast saying, what's going on? You know, we've got these bills to pay. What's going on? Where's this income? How's this dropping? So yes, there was that reflection and that kind of moment of sort of thinking, yeah, no, as a clinician, this isn't really working. But there's also, you know, my dear wife saying, you've got to change this now. You've got to go back. You've got to kind of, you know, give them a little bit of what they want, because surely there's a kind of halfway house with this.
Yeah, so you've got, the patients don't seem to be coming back and getting the results. You've got the business isn't doing as well as it was, and you're just not enjoying it. So it's like
Yeah.
nobody's enjoying this process.
Yeah, and I think being a bit self-centered, it was me not enjoying it that was more, because I just fully believe that you just stick with it, plow on through, and they'll come flooding back. There'll be that moment where it will turn around. So that it was, it was more to do with that, just that feeling of, am I burning out on this? And I think that's really important, because people might associate burnout with being, just working non-stop, but the burnout for me was that psychologically, just thinking all the time about trying to come up with a solution, trying to make, when's it going to get better, when's this, what do I need to do, how much money do I need to spend a month?
You're working an 80-hour week then, aren't you? Just because you're only in clinic for maybe 30 or 40, it's constantly going on in your brain.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's something that I think people need to be aware of. And especially what I found most difficult is that idea that to not get the rewards for what I felt that I needed, that I deserved, that how hard I'd worked to build this clinic, and how hard I'd work in the clinic, and how much time and energy and all that kind of stuff that we actually spend on going to these courses, and I felt like I'm going to be elevated to the status, and to not achieve that, quite stressful. So very much it was just a feeling. I sort of lost that loving feeling of going to clinic, and sort of just
I can imagine that there could almost be there's a risk of like resentment creeping in then, of like, I've done all this work, I'm doing all this stuff, people don't appreciate it. I'm not even making the same money I was before. And as much as we all say we're not motivated by the money, none of us are doing it for free either. And to say, okay, I'm doing this thing that's supposed to be better, people appreciate me less, and I'm losing income. There's like, you could very easily, and I've seen a couple of colleagues actually slip into more of a resentful place of blaming everybody else, and it's a very difficult place to get yourself out of, and nobody else can really help at that stage. So it sounds like, as much as none of us wanted 2020, that was quite an opportune time, I guess, to have that pause and that reflection, like you say.
Yeah, and also, I mean, it was unlucky for me that I developed a horrendous bout of sciatica, and those biopsychosocialists amongst us would kind of go, yeah, those things are probably not unconnected. So there was me laid up for weeks with really, really disabling problem. And it was great, really. I was able to think to myself, blimey, what do I want right now? I just want somebody to help me out, and I just want, and I'm not going to say to you that, I just want my pelvis adjusted, because it's going to, I'm not going to, I didn't go that far back through the way, but it just really kind of brought it home to me that this is about helping people. This is about helping them get through something. And it just made me realize that perhaps it really doesn't matter how that happens. It's about that person. It's not about me. It's about them. So
if you went to see you, what were you going to do? You already had the knowledge. So if you went to see someone to help you out, it's like, well, I already know this stuff. So presumably you were thinking like, oh, but I'd want something else there now, being in that position.
It was about wanting to be heard. It was about to be validated and to be reassured. I would have loved to have been able to have somebody check me out and say, look, you're going to be okay. This will be okay. And so, I felt all those things. It was lonely, it was confusing, my mind would race thinking, oh God, what could this be? Do I need an MRI scan? And all those thoughts. You think at the end of the day, I was just a human being in pain and feeling quite scared, and just wanting to reach out to somebody and saying, can you help me? And, like I say, even if it's just like, will you listen to me? If I describe this thing to you, can you tell me that it's okay?
Yeah.
So I think that was really useful, because it brought in, we're talking about blending the pain science and the manual therapy. So there's kind of proof to me that stuff, I can't throw away any of that stuff, because maybe that's encapsulating what that's all about. It's about recognizing that somebody in front of you needs your help, and it's not up to you, and you know, you should get over yourself into kind of saying, yes, but before we get to the help, I'm going to tell you this, that, and the other, and you're wrong about this. And because when you tell somebody that perhaps you know your pelvis isn't misaligned or whatever, you're not giving them information they're going to go, oh, that's brilliant. You're telling them they're stupid.
Yeah, it's not helpful. They can't use that and go, okay, thank you.
Yeah, they think that you're sitting there going, you're so stupid to think that. You know, of course,
there's a real patronizing risk with it, I think, isn't there? I see that a lot. It's sort of like, you claim this is more patient-centered, and you spend your whole time telling patients they're wrong, and thank God they saw you because you're so clever. Like, not in those words, but that's kind of the energy. And that was something I struggled with when I kind of encountered pain sign. Like, I don't know if you had this. I had like a 6-month existential crisis because I was very much in the mechanical model. I just studied like selective functional movement assessment, like the idea that you can break the body down into these core component movements, find the broken movement and fix it. And then I stumbled across this forum called Soma Simple that was full of mainly PTs who were super, super pain science, very anti-manual therapy. And yeah, but they were pulling out references and stories and stuff. And I'm like, I can't dispute this. I think I've been mucking up all my patients for years, and I've yellow flagged them all into becoming dependent maintenance patients. And it took about 6 months before I was like, okay, maybe I haven't mucked them all up. But even then, that was well before I even went and actually took one of Peter's one of his courses. So where could you speak a bit more to where you're at now? So what changes did you make after lockdown? What did you had this period of self-reflection, you had this personal experience of sciatica, you realized you wanted to do something different. What did you think when you came back to seeing patients? You thought, I'm going to do this differently. What were the changes?
Yeah, I think I was able to I was able to bite my tongue more. I was able to sit on my hands, as the expression goes. That again, it was just that massive dose of empathy and sympathy that it made more sense. It was, I said earlier about saying for years I've known this expression, you meet them where they are. And then it really resonates, and something happens and something clicks in your brain and you go, oh, I really understand what that means now. I didn't before. I thought I did, but I didn't. So it was just that it took something within me to really realize what my position should be. So it would be, I wouldn't dismiss the idea of using, adjustments that, I try and, whereas before I could go through a day. I was very proud of a day in clinic once where I was able to note down that I haven't performed a single adjustment in the whole day of the clinic. And so I sort of flip that. I'd flip it and say, well, I just need to be sensible here and just say most patients are going to get an adjustment unless there's a really proper reason not to. And that should be the case anyway. We've got this, need for an urgent referral or whatever, always plainly obvious this person is contraindicated to manipulate, then that should be the case.
Yeah.
So it was just being able to really feel that rather than kind of say, yeah, everybody gets the clicks. But just to really feel like, well, that might as well be part of the session because let's see. And what's nice about that is that, I will still see cases where the patient does really respond to an adjustment in a way that I didn't expect they would. And then we're able to stand back and go, yeah, what's that about? Last week I had somebody who I'd seen before, and he'd come in with a different presentation. He came in with tennis elbow. And he said, look, oh, great, brilliant, give me the exercises and strapped his elbow and all that kind of stuff. And he said, but I can't help thinking that I've got this neck problem that's on the left side and my tennis elbow's on the left side. And I said, look, because it's you and you've been very kind to kind of come back and continue the treatment, etc., I'll give you a free adjustment on your neck. So we did the session, we did the kind of tennis elbow stuff. It was really painful and we were struggling with the exercise a bit. Performed the adjustment on the left side of his neck. And then he's kind of wiggling his elbow and gripping the stuff and dynamometer and all that kind of stuff. And I'm thinking, no, that's not supposed to happen. And he's like, brilliant, I'll see you next week. And it's like, yeah, okay, great. Whatever. So you have to be humble.
I'm supposed to be the expert, not the patient.
Yeah. I think that's and that's fun. I mean, that's where I suppose it's about, I create a good relationship with that guy. So we can muck about with it. We can have a laugh about it. It can be playful. you know, and you know, I think this relationship stuff, you know, it used to be very didactic. It used to be that, you know, quite literally, I'd be standing here at the whiteboard, you know, the person sat in front of me, and I'd be drawing the brain and the outputs and all this kind of
Looking
stuff.
down over your glasses at them.
Yeah. I cringe when I think about how often I did that. You know, that wasn't a relationship. That was, you know, that, yeah, like I say, literally talking down to somebody. So yeah, it's about having that kind of that playful relationship with the patient, and then me all of a sudden kind of go, "Do you know what, this is fun again, isn't it? This is
Yeah, well,
fun."
because you've introduced novelty that's not a threat. Now it's not things aren't happening, things, you know, something that I didn't expect happened. That's a threat to my paradigm, my worldview. I don't know. Now it's like, oh, that's unusual. Let's get in and explore that a bit more.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think you can only do that when you put the groundwork in, like I said about the trust bank and all the stuff about therapeutic alliance and all that kind of stuff. And it's just being, I suppose, it's being true to yourself, isn't it? It's about being yourself with that person. And I mean that could be tricky, because sometimes I see building the therapeutic alliance a bit like it's a bit like platonic dating. You sit down with somebody the first time, you're sussing them out, they're sussing you out, and you have to say the right thing, and you kind of have to, you know, smile in the right place and all that kind of stuff. You're dating this patient.
Yeah, I've used that metaphor a lot actually. First dates, yeah.
No, it really makes sense. And as long as, you know, you don't go too far with it, then, you know, it really helps to think, yeah, what would you do if you think, oh, I think this might be the one. You know, I really want to make sure that I impress them and all that kind of, you know, you wouldn't, I mean, you could sort of just say, right, I'm going to blather on about this, that, and the other, and sit and I don't care whether you're enjoying the date or not. You're not going to get very far. You will be that guy. So yeah, to kind of just you know, make sure that you're, you know, you need to have fun on that date.
Yeah.
Otherwise it's not going to happen again. So that was the thing that made sense to me when I felt that again. I felt that moment of connecting with people and having fun with people and joking with people. My approach to practice is I don't take myself seriously at all with patients. I take them very seriously. I take their pain very seriously. But I'm always looking, you know, I'm always looking to make stupid jokes or whatever it might be, you know, classic dad jokes, left, right, and centre. That's my practice. And I suppose it was about that. It was about realizing that when you just give them a little, you know, arm around the shoulder and that kind of stuff, and give them what they want, it opens the door to that stuff. I don't know if that's answered the question though.
Yeah, no, definitely. I love that. I love that it's you're having more fun, you're being more relaxed around it. I mean, I think personally, I think that's really, really key. Not just to being an effective practitioner long term, because if you're not enjoying that, yeah, burnout's where you end up. But also, I think it's really important for patients, because you enjoy being in the presence of somebody who's having a good time. And if, like you said, the vibe patients are going to get from you, if it's, or anybody, if it's like stressed out, that almost combative kind of, look, I've got to do something here and I've got to change it and I've got to show you how you're wrong. It's even if it's accurate and even if it's right and even if it's helped, like it's not, people don't want to stick around that person. Eventually they'll go, yeah, okay, great, but this doesn't seem like an enjoyable place to be. The emotional experience here isn't positive. You know, it's like the total opposite, the scare care, high volume, X-ray everybody. Oh my God, you've got phase 3 degeneration. Thank God you came. Otherwise you could have had cancer in 5 years. Those places, even when somebody's like, oh my God, I didn't know all this stuff. Yes, here's my payment for 36 plans up front. They do that and they're like, thank God I came now. Like, this could have been so bad. They don't refer. No. They actually don't refer, because they do not want anyone else they know to have that negative emotional experience. Yeah. It's the same kind of thing there, even if it works and even if they're like, oh, you're right, thank you. If you're not having fun in practice, it's really hard to build that long term.
Also, I think, if you don't mind me saying, there was there's something that I think was important too, that you said about not referring. I think that here's a criticism that people say, if you introduce this idea of pain science and you'll say, well, you know, I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a counsellor, you know, I'm a manual therapist, or people will say something like, oh, I didn't expect I'll get a bit of counselling today. Now, counselling for most people these days is quite a private thing. There's still a stigma attached. So if you're, and this is my advice again to anybody who wants it, that, you know, be careful about going down that route of, you know, leaning too much into stress, anxiety, and relationships and that kind of thing. Because number one, it's not what the patient's expecting. That's fine. Number two, you have to build up quite a lot of trust before, you know, you expect somebody to tell you how they're getting on with their wife or whatever it might be. But also, that's private to them. So they're unlikely to go and tell their friends that you should go and see that guy, because they sort of have to admit that they're having a bit of therapy from you.
Yeah, if their friend goes in and they're like, wow, that chiropractor is almost like therapy, then it's
Yeah.
like, oh, that's what you had. That's why you recommended
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what are you talking about? Or like I say, you wouldn't, I don't think you'd say, oh, wow, great. Hey, everybody, I'm really struggling with depression. I've been seeing this great counselor. In this day and age, we don't do that. And so if you position yourself too much as that person, then you might find your people's little secret, you know?
No, that's a
So
good
that,
point, actually. Yeah, because it's interesting. The last few years, because my wife qualified as a counselor last year, and
yeah.
it's been really interesting as she's been training us, having chats about the things she's learning and the communication approaches and stuff like that. And it's so I've learned a huge amount from counseling and psychotherapy, and the literature and the research that, to me, they've been doing this patient-centered thing for years, like decades. Because that's all they have is the therapeutic alliance. And it's really informed a lot of my approach to communication. It needs adapting, and obviously you don't delve into things in the same way. But there is definitely, I noticed when I was getting more into that, there's a part of me that wanted to like almost be a counselor to patients, and it was my wanting to be an expert again. I wanted to be better than every other chiropractor because I dealt with this stuff, and I did have to watch that and go, okay, hang on a minute. I'm not trained to do that. It's very, very risky, because if it goes wrong, it goes badly wrong. And B, yeah, they don't want this. Like some do, and yeah, over time, I've got some. I literally, one patient of the week, she was like, "Sorry, this is a bit more like a therapy session today," but I was like, "Yeah," and that's what she needed. But we've known each other for a while. I've earned that trust, and she's felt she could do that. I've had patients I've known far longer who just would not tell me about whatever's going on, because that's private and that's personal. And I'm a chiropractor. And I did just want to ask briefly as well, because obviously we're speaking about this as chiropractors, and I think that presents some unique challenges. When we were chatting a little while ago, if I remember right, you were talking about maybe not using the title when you were very much into the cognitive functional therapy, Petro Solomon's approach.
Yeah, absolutely. That's something I picked up from Don Murphy, which he's a great speaker. The way he would draw your attention, catch your attention in his speeches, he'd come out and say, right, this is a room of chiropractors. I got something to tell you. People hate you. People hate chiropractors. So why do you call yourself chiropractors? I'm like, wow, okay, that's brought me up quite short. And his approach would be that you just don't push yourself as a chiropractor. You don't deny that you're a chiropractor, but you sell the benefits of what you do. You don't sell the word chiropractic. And so, for instance, the clinic here, it only I would have been very proud to say this about 6 months ago. It doesn't have the word chiropractic anywhere. It doesn't say chiropractor. It says expert diagnosis of disc, whatever it says on the front of my building. It says disc pain, joint pain, muscle pain, whatever pain. And so one of my patients said, you're trying to tell people about not using this word pain, and the front of the clinic is plastered with the word pain. I was like, yeah, I hadn't thought that. But it didn't say chiropractic until a few months ago. And this was part of me kind of finding the middle ground. Going, okay, no, do you know what, I need to put the word chiropractic somewhere on the front of the building. So yeah, so the point being that yes, I very much saw that. I saw the benefit in the idea of people don't know what chiropractic is. Like I said, however long ago, I didn't know what a chiropractor was, and then I became a chiropractor. And there's lots of misconceptions and lots of confusion about what chiropractic or chiropractor is. And again, especially perhaps in a little town where I am, I'm the only chiropractor. So I thought, yeah, that would probably make a lot of sense to replace chiropractor with something else. And so I called myself pain recovery coach, which kind of makes sense. I now think it's a bit woolly. I don't think it's very striking. But I still think that there is benefit in putting your profession, putting your qualification in the background. It's about you, and it's about what that person wants, and it's about the goals that they have. And so if you're going to put all your eggs in the basket of promoting yourself as the chiropractor or a chiropractic clinic, I'm not sure that's helpful. I think it's about saying, what are the things in life that you're missing out on, and can we help you get there?
Yeah,
that's a useful way to look at maybe like the Simon Sinek, the why question. Why am I doing this? It's not about the what. I'm a chiropractor. Why am I a chiropractor? To help people get to that end goal. And so, yeah, it doesn't make any sense to use this word when you can just use an image or, a vision of where they can get with you. So, yeah, so I mean, so I kind of, changed my website to pain recovery coach and, removed all reference to chiropractic. And again, I suppose just in practice, it became a little bit, people weren't sure one way or the other.
Yeah, I don't, if I said, oh, I saw this pain recovery coach the other day, I feel like people go, oh, what do they do? It's like with a chiropractor, they're like, oh, at least I know that's the thing. I might think all they do is, crack backs, but I'm like, oh, okay, that's the thing I've heard of. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's about, I suppose I've got the luxury of having the opportunity to try a few things and for stuff to go wrong, but we're still here. I mean, and I think that speaks to how successful the business has been, in that, I can basically throw a business away and 6 years later I'm still here, or 7 years later I'm still here as a chiropractor, and I think it's very tempting. It's very tempting to go down that route of high volume practice. It's very difficult to have a sample of that and the benefits that go with seeing loads and loads of patients, and then sort of think, oh, do you know what, I'm going to step back and do this differently. Most, oh, don't do that. You're doing really well. Again, I'm not sure if I'm answering the question at all.
No, this is good. This is really, really useful. I mean, so if we were to compare, let's say I'm a fly on the wall, I'm observing you in clinic today, and I'm comparing that to observing you in clinic, say 10 years ago, before you'd even come across Petro Solomon, this type of thing. What am I seeing that's different? What would I see in the room when you're with a patient?
You'd see me in very formal dress. You'd see me maybe in a white tunic, but you'd certainly see me with a shirt and tie. You'd see me standing up a lot, or you might not see me at all, because I came up with this fantastic idea. When I at the height of my practice, I would work between two identical treatment rooms, and you'd have the patient changing in one room while you were adjusting in the other room, and you could just swap and you could see people, really, really quickly. And I came up with this great idea, and I'd asked my receptionist who's been with me since the start. I said, actually, do you know what you can do? Can you bring them into the room and have them lying face down? So I don't have to talk to them. I can just get on with, being a back mechanic. And again, that was one of the instances where she had the, I was going to say nerve, that's not the right word, but she stood up for the situation and said, I don't think people are going to like that. I was like, yeah, you might be right. So yeah, I was so fascinated, I was so, obsessed with just manipulating that I didn't think I even had time to talk to people.
Yeah, they're here to have their back cracked. Like, what does the talking bit matter? Yeah.
Yeah, the power of the adjustment is all. So, come in, get it done, and it's up to you whether you get better or not, kind of thing. So yeah, you'd see me rushing between one room and the other. You'd see me very formal, not much time for the patient. I've got my formula. I was just going to do the adjustment and get on to the next one. So yeah, very different. So now what you're going to see is, you probably see in the background, I've gone for a much more homely feel. The lighting, the two little sofas here that we sit and chat.
I didn't twig this was your clinic, by the way, until I saw the models up on the shelf, and I thought, pretty sure my wife wouldn't be all right with anatomy models in our living room, but it has that really nice feel there. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely the feel I wanted. So that would have been very different as well. So back in the old clinic, we moved clinic as well, which kind of doesn't really matter. But the old clinic was, I wanted to look like almost like a surgical room. I wanted very
an expert doctor of chiropractic.
Yeah, absolutely. And now, yeah, it's soft. It's soft furnishings. It's soft and dressed differently. I've had a haircut that's a little bit more severe than I'm used to, but usually it'd be a bit more unkempt and that kind of stuff. So yeah, there'd be a very, very different vibe.
And then what would you be doing with the patients now that you weren't doing back then?
There'd be, lots more talking. A lot more. The history for me is key. Taking the history or receiving the history, you should say. That for me is fascinating. I'm fascinated. I feel like I feel perhaps this would be a selling point for people, is to be, like where, you're interviewing me now, and I listen to loads of podcasts and I sort of identify with the interviewer and think, God, they're really good at getting that information out to me. And I think to myself, God, what a treat, what an absolute treat to be interviewed and for somebody to listen to you. And so, I put a lot of importance in that, and saying to the patient, as you said, I'm going to listen to everything that you have to say. Tell me everything. Tell me all about it. Tell me everything, and listen to everything you say. And really hope that the patient goes, oh, wow, brilliant. God, nobody's done that for me before. This is great. I'm really enjoying just talking. So, really amplifying that and reassuring the patient, they kind of say some, they'll give you a very potted history and kind of say, well, I don't know what else you want to know. It's like, no, that's fine. Honestly, this is what we're here to do. Just, keep talking, keep telling me, keep describing.
That whole, sorry, this isn't relevant. You don't need to know that. Go off on a tangent. Yeah. Those excuses come back from
imagine this is like a really complicated movie and I've come in halfway through. So don't worry, I want, tell me all about it, describe everything that's happening, every scene. I want to know absolutely what's going on, because I'm going to watch the rest of it with you. And they go, oh, right, I see. So you do have to know, what was happening at the time, how I feel about it, and what, it's just replaying those scenes again.
I really like that metaphor, that, I might pinch that one.
No, you can have it. Because for me, it makes sense. It allows them to kind of slow down a bit and just don't say, oh yeah, that guy shot that guy, now he's chasing that guy. That doesn't help me. Just who is that guy?
Yeah.
That tends to help. It's just about telling them, just calm down a bit, take a breath. Let's get stuck into this.
Yeah.
Again, that you have to adapt that, and that's helpful with the social styles model, with recognizing where somebody that's just not going to work for them. They don't want to do that. They want to tell you.
Yeah. Driver in, out. Here's the facts. Give me the solution. Off we go.
And that's fine, because then that's helpful all round. You're both going to get what you need from that encounter. But I do wonder whether if they know that that's an opportunity for them to just sit down and really let it all out. But I wonder what would happen to a driver if they knew that they were to be interviewed and you're going to hang on every single word they have to say. So that's the structure of the first hour with them is for me very, very much about, we are going to talk about this, and we're going to explore and maybe we'll get to treatment at the end, and that's helpful with you saying about the session and a half kind of idea. We'll try and get a bit of treatment in just to sort of see how you kind of, it's a sample, you can kind of see how I work, and then if that seems useful, then we'll use that next time. So that's been very helpful. But yeah, and it's more movement, it's more mucking about, it's more playful stuff, and I might be doing stuff with I've got a broomstick, which I tell them is a Chinese fighting stick, and they're not to be concerned when I bring it into the room. If they've got a position, I come with this broomstick, and that's how I kind of approach it. A little bit daft, really. Things like juggling and throwing balls. The rehab is through the back door. Playing ping pong or whatever. That's something I would never ever have considered back in the day. We're going to be, we're going to do some fake kind of karate moves or whatever it might be. But it's fun. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's bringing that fun back in from what you're saying.
Yeah. And then and there's a bit of treatment. And I found that what's useful as well. This is a Lorimer Moseley kind of thing, which is that you just ask, would they like to know more about that? If you do a report of findings and you kind of use the model or the pictures or whatever it might be, I find the best thing to do is say, do you want to know more about that? Do you want me to explain that in a different way? Or is that okay? It's okay. Then the decision is there. It's
a patient-centered approach to communication.
Yeah. No, I get it, or I don't get it, or I'm not sure. Brilliant. Well, I know where you're at. When it comes to the treatment recommendation as well, and I think I suppose it ties in inadvertently with patients being able to be brave enough to tell you what they think. It takes quite a bit of guts to kind of remove your own ego from the situation and say, what do you think? I've given you my idea. What do you think? What do you really think? Is that going to be okay? Can you afford it?
Yeah, it's an invitation for them to go, well, I'm not so sure about this. You've got to be able to sit with your own self-confidence to a degree that, open yourself up to a challenge and not worry about what if they say they're not happy or what if they say they don't get it. Yeah, but it's my experience, it's a much nicer place to be. It's like, oh, great, pressure's off me. I don't have to be the expert with the answers. And you know, I say this all the time now. I don't ever think, I can't think of the last time I tried to persuade a patient to do something. Like, I might try and inspire them if I think it's leading towards where they want to be, but to like persuade them to do something they don't want to do, like, it almost never works. And when it does, it works by introducing a bit of resentment, and then they stop doing it as soon as they can get away with it. So having that exploratory sense, I think, is really valuable. I'm aware of the time. There's a couple of the quick questions I wanted to ask you before we go, if that's all right. Firstly, what advice would you give to, say, somebody who's a fairly new graduate? They've come out the last couple of years and they're aware there's this false dichotomy, or whatever you want to call it, but there's this kind of like manual therapy versus rehab pain science approach. And they're all kind of finding it quite confusing. You know, they've had confusing messages at uni, they've had confusing messages after they graduated. What kind of advice would you give someone like that?
I would say that if you possibly can, is to accept that this stuff it can permeate. If you allow it to, it can permeate into how you think, how you do stuff, how you are with patients. But you just have to let it kind of settle. You have to let it kind of, just blend in. If you can just stop yourself from jumping too hard into it. That it will be useful. You won't forget it. You won't be, I suppose it's not like learning a technique on a weekend course and then thinking, well, I have to remember how to do that bit, and then you showed me how to put my hand there. It's not like that. This can be absorbed into the way you are. Like I said earlier, it's kind of it's the air you breathe. It's not the thing that you do. And I think that it's important to, it's important to. I suppose I'm hesitating. I'm thinking, we're talking about somebody like me who's on my own and doesn't have anybody to reflect on, to be able to say, if I was the associate for my boss and he was like saying, well, hang on, you think as down in the toilet, what's going on? That would have been very useful, I suppose. And so I think it's about just hang on to it, and understand that there is a middle ground. There is a middle ground to putting your hands on people and manipulating people and seeing them improve and that kind of thing. And that's all part of it. That is all part of a completely evidence-based, acceptable, appropriate way of treating people. And that you perhaps don't have to worry too much. I mean, I had this kind of paranoia that, what if Petro Solomon came and watched me work? Had all these names that,
What would Peter think? Yeah.
Peter think, what would Adam Meekins think? Such a, manual therapy sucks guy. What would he think if I saw me dare to actually do a treatment on somebody? It's quite paralyzing to kind of.
Yeah, I'd be one of those chiropractors he was rubbishing on Instagram and stuff. That could be me.
Yeah, absolutely. So it can paralyze you into, just stopping everything. I probably did me. So yeah, it's about knowing that it can settle. It can absolutely settle in that middle, and you don't have to justify, putting your hands on people. You don't have to justify any of that to anybody. It just has to be a grown-up relationship between you and the person in front of you who's in pain, and I can't do it now because the camera's too small. But this idea of, you're not face to face with somebody. It's one of your little doodles, isn't it? You're not kind of face to face with this person. You should be side by side with them with your arm around them, so saying, well, let's look out here and see where can we go with this.
Yeah.
It's
a sense, I think, patience is what's coming into it. It's like not trying to go, I've got to take this stuff and do it all right on Monday morning, and I've got to change stuff. Like you had that sort of weekend epiphany of, I'm going to change everything. More a case of think about it, keep it on your mind, but don't rush into changing a lot of stuff. Don't feel like you need to be the expert straight away, I guess. Is that fair?
Yeah, absolutely. And you can't be. And, I do sort of, have a little kind of bee in my bonnet about how, when I look back and go to things like Peter and Lauren Mosley and all these kind of things, I wish that they could have said, listen, guys, this stuff is really amazing, but don't go mad on it. We're not sure, we're not quite sure where this fits. Most of your physios, some of your chiros, some of the osteos, whatever it might be. Here's some information that we want you to kind of take on board and think about and ponder, and maybe come back to. Don't go mad. Don't Monday morning the hell out of this. And the last time I saw Lon Mosley speak, he said something along the lines of, look, we can't tell you what to do with this information. We're not taking responsibility for what you do with this information. I was really pissed off at that, because I was like, well, hang on, mate. You basically, you have completely revolutionized what I do, and now here's you literally saying, this has nothing to do with me.
Yeah.
I can see that kind of backlash. I said earlier about saying the backlash to all this stuff, and me thinking, I'm in that, because I felt quite let down by that. This kind of explain pain movement, and then to sort of say, yeah, but we're not, do what you like with it.
It doesn't work. It's nothing to do with us, kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit. So I suppose there's that kind of advice, is to use it carefully, use it judiciously. Use it like you said. It's like a treatment method that you've learned. Not everybody can have that treatment on Monday morning, but my belief is that it should permeate everything that you do, and it's not good enough to kind of ignore it, or just to say, well, that doesn't apply to me because I get these great results with all my patients just by adjusting the hell out of them.
Yeah.
It has to be part. You have to know who these people are. In my opinion, you have to know. And that's disappointing if you say to, mention the name Lauren Mosley or whatever, and you get a blank look. You think, yeah, I think we should know who these people are.
Yeah.
Can't be so into chiropractic that nobody else counts.
Yeah. That kind of leads into, I guess, final question I was going to ask. And it's a bit of a selfish question, because I'm actually taking 2 of our associates to the Petro Solomon seminar next month. Should we be going to see Petro Solomon? Should we be going to this? Would you recommend that to colleagues to go to this seminar?
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%. 100%. I mean, I think that, especially, we talked about like expectations and setting people up and that kind of thing. So to have the ability to say to them, look, what you're about to see might blow your mind. It might be absolutely mind-boggling for you to see this happening. Or you might just kind of go, or whatever. But for you to be able to say to them, just bear in mind that you kind of have to fit this into your practice, but it can't be, it can't be your practice.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I would say absolutely, you need to see, if you want to be the complete expert, you as a chiropractor, an osteopath, or whatever we're talking about, you owe it to yourself to dip into these different ways of, treating and learning. And then when you see, the kind of research that Peter's coming up with and his team, we need to know that stuff. He's talking specifically about how best to treat disabling, persistent low back pain. How are we not in on that? How do we not know that stuff inside out? That perhaps should be us driving that. So yeah, absolutely. To be the completest, then you have to know Petro Solomon stuff.
Yeah, I think I know, because I went a few years ago. The couple of reasons that I'd go back this time. One was I thought, I know is like they're both fairly new graduates. This stuff it was overwhelming for me, and I'd been out several years. So I thought I want to make sure I'm kind of there with them in case they've got questions and things like that. But also, I'm not, second time through, I'm not going to go to day one. Because for those who don't know, day one is very much the theory, and then days 2 and 3, it's just watching him work live with people. I would say watching him work live, I didn't really take a lot from the theory. There was Morten Hoch, who's a big chronic pain physio over in Denmark. He's the head of one of their big academies or something. I was chatting to him about this, and he's like, but all that, he's like, cognitive functional therapy is like, all that bit, that's just BS. Like chronic central sensitization, that's all BS. Like all this stuff, it's just BS that we've just made. It's theory. Doesn't really mean anything. It's like, go see them do it live. Like watch Petro Solomon work with somebody live. That you'll learn a ton from. The actual theory, he's like, yeah, it's interesting, but it's made up stuff because we don't really know. And that's kind of true of all it doesn't mean it's not valid, but he was like, even the idea of central sensitization, he's like, we made that up. That's a model. We don't know that's happening inside the patient. So maybe don't get too hung up on that. Just look at what they do and how they get people better.
The other advice I would give anybody going for the first time is, I can't remember the name of the place, but there's that pub that's right next door to the Royal Free Hospital. And if you're lucky, everybody who's anybody on the course is in the pub afterwards, you know, sinking a few pints. And that was probably one of the highlights of my professional career, is being there going, oh wow, oh, I'm having a drink with them. Oh, that's brilliant. So yeah, find that pub. I think it might be called the Queen's Head or something. Anyway, it's nice.
I'm going to look at this pub because I did not know that last time.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. It was a great few nights out.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
All right, lovely. Well, thanks again for your time, Hedd. We've got to wrap things up there, but really appreciate that. I think, like I said, it's really valuable for people to hear your experience, having gone from that traditional chiro background right through to trying to emulate, you know, Petro Solomon, these people, to finding that middle ground. I hope more and more of us can do that, because I completely agree. We need to know this stuff. It's not enough to go, oh, that's a weird physio thing, I'm going to leave that. But equally, that the risk of overdosing, I think, is quite a real one as well. But yeah, thanks again for your time. I'd love to follow up, and there's probably about 50 other things I wanted to ask you that I'll think of afterwards, but maybe we can chat again sometime.
My perspective, Chris, I think, you know, the stuff that you do is great, and I think that it's been really useful for me, having kind of come through that period of going, I don't know, almost like, how do I integrate myself back into being a chiropractor? And the stuff that you're doing is you know, absolutely, you know, so helpful. It was really helpful, you know, continues to be really helpful for me. So that's, you know, that's my moment to repay the compliment.
Oh, my pleasure. It's lovely to hear. All right. Well, thanks again, Hedd, and we'll chat soon.
Good. Yeah. Thanks, Chris. Enjoyed that.
Yes, me too.
Right.
Okay.
See you again. Cheers. Bye.